My name is Arif, and I still remember the way the room fell silent the moment my cousin Rohan lifted his glass. It was his housewarming party, the first big celebration in his new Denver home. Laughter and chatter faded as all eyes turned toward him. His eyes sparkled with that familiar excitement, an expression I had seen countless times before, usually right before he claimed the spotlight. "I'd like to make a toast," Rohan announced. He paused just long enough to build suspense. "To new beginnings, new homes," he lifted his glass higher, then added softly, "and to Grandpa's memory." A respectful hush settled over the room. Our grandfather had passed away just 4 days earlier, and the grief was still raw. I raised my glass along with everyone else, quietly honoring the man who had meant more to me than I could ever put into words. But Rohan wasn't finished. "Speaking of Grandpa," he continued, setting his drink down on the coffee table, "I have an announcement to make." Something in my chest tightened. I watched him reach into his pocket and pull out an envelope, its edges slightly worn. When he glanced at me, just for a split second, unease crept over me like a chill. "Before he died, Grandpa gave me this letter," Rohan said, his voice carrying across the living room. "He wanted me to have his vacation home by the lake. The cabin we all loved as kids." The room erupted. Surprised gasps, congratulations, applause. My parents smiled proudly. Rohan's girlfriend Maya clapped enthusiastically. Across the room, my cousin Nisha stared at me, confusion written all over her face. She knew, everyone knew, how close Grandpa and I had been. I sat frozen, barely hearing the noise around me. The lakeside cabin wasn't just property. It was Grandpa's most treasured possession. For the past 3 years, I had spent nearly every weekend there, helping him maintain the place, listening to his stories, sharing quiet mornings on the porch. Rohan, on the other hand, had visited maybe twice in 5 years, always complaining about the lack of Wi-Fi and nothing to do. What no one else knew was this: 3 weeks earlier, Grandpa had given me a small wooden box and made me promise not to open it until the time was right. Inside that box was a notarized deed transferring ownership of the cabin to me. He had already given me the property. It wasn't even part of his estate. As Rohan unfolded the letter and began reading what he claimed were Grandpa's wishes, my mind raced. Was he lying? Did he somehow know about the deed? Had Grandpa changed his mind without telling me? "That's great," I managed to say, forcing a smile. "Good for you, Rohan." Inside, panic churned. I needed to get home. I needed to open that box. And I needed answers, now. I quietly excused myself, murmuring something about needing the bathroom, and slipped away from the celebration. As soon as I closed the door behind me, I leaned against it and took a shaky breath. Something wasn't right. Grandpa's handwriting had become increasingly shaky in his final months. Arthritis had made even holding a pen difficult for him. But the signature I'd glimpsed on Rohan's letter looked smooth. Confident. Too perfect. My phone buzzed. "Nisha, you okay?" That was weird. Rohan never even cared about the cabin. I typed back quickly. "Me, need to check something at home. Can you cover for me? Say I got called into work." Within minutes she replied that she'd handled it. I slipped out the back door while everyone was still congratulating Rohan on his inheritance. The drive to my apartment felt surreal. Streetlights blurred past as memories flooded my mind, Grandpa teaching me how to fish off the dock, pointing out constellations in the clear mountain sky, laughing at my terrible attempts to skip stones across the lake. The cabin wasn't just a place. It was where our most precious memories lived. Where Grandpa had taught me patience, resilience, and the joy of simple things. Rohan had never cared about any of that. As soon as I got home, I went straight to my closet and retrieved the wooden box Grandpa had given me. It was his old cedar cigar box, worn smooth with age, still faintly fragrant. "Don't open this until you need to know the truth," he'd told me, his eyes crinkling with that knowing smile. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside were several neatly folded documents, a sealed envelope with my name written on it, and a small brass key. I recognized the key immediately. It opened the antique roll-top desk in Grandpa's study at the cabin. I unfolded the top document and gasped. A notarized deed. The vacation home, transferred to me. Dated 6 months ago. Beside it was a letter in Grandpa's unmistakably shaky handwriting. My dearest Arif, it began. By the time you read this, I'll likely be gone. Tears blurred my vision as I read on. Grandpa explained that he'd given me the cabin while he was still alive to avoid complications. That I was the only one who truly loved the place the way he did. That everything had been properly notarized and filed, with a copy held by his lawyer, Harold Bennett. The cabin is already yours, the letter said. It is not part of my will or estate. I sat back, stunned. Rohan had lied. Not just exaggerated, he had fabricated a letter, knowing full well the cabin legally belonged to me. My phone buzzed again. Messages from my parents asking where I'd gone. Then one from Rohan, nice disappearing act. Don't worry, you can still visit the cabin if you ask nicely. That was the moment everything clicked. This wasn't something to handle over text. Or quietly. This required the truth, delivered face to face. I wiped my tears, took a steadying breath, and gathered the documents back into the wooden box. The party would still be going on for at least another hour. I checked the time, grabbed my keys, and headed back to my car. The drive back to Rohan's house gave me too much time to think. Grandpa had always told me, when you have the truth on your side, Arif, you don't need to shout. The quiet truth hits harder than any loud lie. I wasn't going back to cause a scene. That wouldn't honor him. I parked a block away from the house, the wooden box resting on the passenger seat. For a moment, I just sat there, gathering my courage. I thought of all the weekends I'd spent with Grandpa while Rohan was too busy. The way Grandpa's face lit up when I arrived. The hours we spent talking on the porch swing about everything and nothing. What would you do, Grandpa? I whispered, my fingers brushing the smooth lid of the box. The answer came instantly, do the right thing, with grace. I texted Nisha. Me, how many people are still there? Nisha, just family now. Most guests left after dinner. You coming back? Perfect. I took the box and walked toward the house. When I knocked, Rohan himself opened the door. His expression shifted from surprise to mild irritation. Work emergency over already? He asked, clearly not buying it. We need to talk, I said calmly, stepping past him. Everyone looked up as I entered the living room. My father was examining Rohan's letter more closely. My mother was already discussing renovation ideas for the cabin with Maya. Nisha sat quietly in the corner, watching with visible discomfort. Arif's back, my mother announced unnecessarily. We were just talking about Rohan's wonderful news. Actually, I said, setting the wooden box on the coffee table, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Rohan's eyes locked onto the box. Recognition flickered across his face. What's that? He asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Something Grandpa gave me 3 weeks ago, I replied evenly. He asked me not to open it until the time was right. I looked directly at him. I think that time is now. Before Rohan could interrupt, my father leaned forward. What is it, Arif? I opened the box and carefully removed the notarized deed and Grandpa's letter. 6 months ago, Grandpa legally transferred ownership of the vacation home to me, I said, laying the documents on the table. The cabin is already mine. It's not part of his estate or his will. Silence. My mother's mouth fell open. My father picked up the deed, his brow furrowing as he read. This is notarized, he said slowly. And this is definitely your grandfather's signature. Rohan stood frozen, his face draining of color. That's impossible, he finally stammered. Grandpa gave me a letter. May I see it? I asked quietly. He had no choice. My father handed me Rohan's letter, and I placed it side by side with Grandpa's handwritten note from the box. The difference was immediate and unmistakable. Grandpa's real handwriting wavered. Letters slanted unevenly, lines shook where his arthritis had forced him to pause. The letter Rohan had produced tried to imitate that style, but it was too controlled, too neat. And the signature at the bottom was flawless. No tremor. No hesitation. Rohan, my mother said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Did you forge this? The room seemed to shrink as all eyes turned to him. Rohan didn't answer. His silence stretched long enough to become an answer all on its own. My father set the letter down, his disappointment unmistakable. Regardless of how you feel, forging your grandfather's signature is serious. Rohan finally broke. You don't understand, he snapped, desperation creeping into his voice. It's not fair that Arif gets everything. Everything? I repeated, genuinely confused. You were always his favorite, Rohan shot back. Always there. Always helping. The perfect grandchild. The rest of us barely mattered. An uncomfortable tension settled over the room. My father cleared his throat. That still doesn't justify lying to the entire family. Rohan sank into a chair, the fight draining out of him. So what happens now? He muttered. You win. This isn't about winning, I said quietly. Grandpa wouldn't have wanted that. Rohan was still my cousin. And Grandpa had loved him too, just differently. I reached back into the wooden box and pulled out a sealed envelope with Rohan's name written on it in Grandpa's shaky hand. He left something for you as well, I said, holding it out. Rohan looked up, suspicion and hope battling in his expression. What is it? I don't know, I answered honestly. Grandpa told me not to open anything that wasn't addressed to me. After a long pause, Rohan took the envelope and carefully opened it. As he read, his expression shifted, defiance fading into shock, then something that looked painfully like regret. He knew, Rohan whispered. He knew I might try to claim the cabin. My mother moved to sit beside him. What does it say, honey? Rohan hesitated, then handed her the letter. Read it. Everyone should hear it. My mother adjusted her glasses and began, Dear Rohan, if you're reading this, then Arif has opened my cedar box. As she read on, tears filled my eyes. Grandpa spoke of understanding Rohan's need for validation, of recognizing his tendency to act impulsively when he felt overlooked. He explained why the cabin belonged to me, not out of favoritism, but because I understood its spirit. Then came the final revelation. I've enclosed a check for $25,000, my mother read aloud, her voice trembling. Use it to start something meaningful. When she finished, the room was silent. Rohan stared at the check in his shaking hands. He saw right through me, he murmured. Even from the grave, Grandpa had told the truth. There wasn't a dry eye in the room when my mother finished reading the letter. Rohan sat hunched forward, his head bowed, the check clenched tightly in his trembling hand. For the first time that night, he looked small, stripped of his bravado, his jealousy laid bare. He always was 3 steps ahead of everyone, my father said quietly, placing a comforting hand on Rohan's shoulder. Rohan looked up at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. I'm sorry, Arif, he said hoarsely. I had no right to try and take something that was already yours. The words didn't erase what he'd done, but they mattered. I nodded, acknowledging the apology even if forgiveness wasn't fully there yet. There's something else in the box, I said. I reached inside and pulled out a small photo album. As I opened it, images spilled across the pages, Rohan and me as kids at the cabin, building sandcastles by the lake, roasting marshmallows with Grandpa by the fire pit, laughing with soot-smudged faces. He kept this in his desk at the cabin, I explained softly. He never stopped hoping you'd come around. Rohan stared at the photos, emotion washing over his face. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, I said honestly. But Grandpa believed you could do better. The room fell into a different kind of silence, heavy, but thoughtful rather than angry. Years of unspoken resentment hovered in the air, finally acknowledged. So what happens now? Nisha asked gently. I closed the wooden box, feeling the weight of responsibility Grandpa had left me, not just for the cabin, but perhaps for our family too. Now, I said, we try to honor what Grandpa wanted for both of us. The gathering broke up soon after. My parents left with worried glances back at Rohan, torn between disappointment and concern. Nisha hugged me tightly before heading out, whispering, "Call me tomorrow." Soon, it was just Rohan and me in his new house. The festive atmosphere had completely evaporated. He moved around the kitchen mechanically, making coffee neither of us really wanted. I didn't plan it, he said finally, setting a mug in front of me. The forgery, I mean. I made the letter the night I found out about the deed. I didn't think I'd actually use it. Then why did you? I asked quietly. Rohan stared into his coffee. Everyone was here. Celebrating my new house. I wanted more. Something bigger to announce. He looked up, vulnerability flickering across his face. I've always been jealous of what you had with Grandpa. You could have had it too, I said gently. He wanted that. I know, Rohan admitted. I was too proud to see it. He hesitated. What are you going to do with the cabin? Keep it mostly the same, I replied. It needs repairs, but I don't want to change its character. Rohan nodded, relief evident. That's good. It should stay the way Grandpa loved it. I studied him for a moment. You're welcome there, you know. Anytime. His eyes widened. Even after what I did. The cabin was meant to bring family together, I said. Not tear us apart. We sat in silence for a few minutes, sipping coffee that had already gone cold. The night had been emotionally exhausting, and there was still so much left unsaid. I should go, I said finally, standing up. Rohan walked me to the door. Just before I left, he asked, "Do you think Grandpa knew this would happen? All this, about the cabin?" I thought about the notarized deed, the separate letters, the careful instructions about the wooden box. I think he hoped it wouldn't, I answered honestly. But he was prepared in case it did. Rohan gave a rueful smile. He always was. He was right. The next morning, I drove up to the cabin. The keys felt heavy in my pocket, not just metal, but memory and responsibility. When the cabin came into view, it looked exactly as I remembered, weathered cedar siding, deep green shutters, and a white porch wrapping around the structure. The early sunlight filtered through the pine trees, casting long shadows that made the place feel like it was welcoming me home. I sat in my car for a moment, taking it all in. This was mine now, not just a building, but a sanctuary. Inside, everything was just as Grandpa had left it. Books stacked neatly on the side table. Fishing gear carefully organized in the corner. The faint scent of pipe tobacco lingering in the air despite his doctor's long-standing objections. I moved slowly through the space, trailing my fingers along furniture that had been in our family for generations. The stillness was peaceful, not lonely. My phone buzzed. A message from Nisha. "Nisha, how's the cabin?" Mom called. "Rohan's a wreck." I replied, "Cabin's perfect." Still figuring out how I feel about Rohan. Another message followed quickly. "He's been calling everyone, trying to explain himself. Your parents are still upset." I wasn't surprised. Trust, once broken, took time to rebuild. I set my phone aside and walked to the large picture window overlooking the lake. The water sparkled in the morning light, calm and unchanged despite the human drama unfolding around it. "I'm here, Grandpa," I whispered. "I'll take good care of it. I promise." 3 weeks passed before Rohan reached out again. Can we talk? At the cabin? Maybe. I debated for a full day before responding with a date and time. Part of me wasn't ready to share this place with him, but Grandpa's voice echoed in my mind. Holding grudges makes the heart heavy, Arif. When Rohan's car pulled up the following Saturday, I was sitting on the porch swing with a cup of coffee. He looked different, quieter, more subdued. This place hasn't changed at all, he said. That's the point, I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. He sat, hands clasped nervously. I've been thinking about what to say for weeks, and nothing feels like enough. Try anyway, I said. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry. Not just for the forgery, for everything. Rohan stared out at the lake for a long moment before continuing. I was jealous, he admitted quietly. Not just of the cabin, but of your relationship with Grandpa. I resented you when I should have been questioning my own choices. I watched his face carefully. The Rohan I'd grown up with was skilled at saying the right things when it benefited him. But this felt different, no excuses, no deflection. Why did you really do it? I asked. The truth. He exhaled slowly. I thought if I had the cabin, it would somehow make up for all the time I didn't spend here. Like I could buy back the moments I missed. His voice cracked. Stupid, right? There was a raw honesty in his words that stopped me from responding right away. I used the money, he added suddenly. Grandpa's check. I enrolled in that woodworking course he always told me to try. He gave a self-conscious laugh. Turns out I'm terrible at it. But I'm sticking with it. It's calming. He would have liked that, I said softly. We sat in silence, listening to the gentle lap of water against the dock. It was the same peaceful soundtrack that had accompanied so many conversations between Grandpa and me over the years. I want to show you something, I said at last. Inside Grandpa's study, I unlocked the antique roll-top desk with the brass key from the wooden box. Inside were neatly organized folders, letters, and small mementos. He kept everything, I explained, pulling out a folder labeled Rohan. Inside were newspaper clippings from Rohan's high school debate championship, photos from his college graduation, and even a printed webpage announcing his recent promotion. He was proud of you, I said. He just showed it differently than you wanted. Rohan's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. I had no idea. There's one for every family member, I added. He called it his brag book. Tears slipped down Rohan's face. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, I said honestly. But Grandpa believed in second chances. So do I. I pulled out a calendar and handed it to him. I've marked weekends I'll be up here working on maintenance. I could use help, even terrible woodworking help. A small smile broke through. You mean it? The cabin was meant to bring family together, I said. That's what Grandpa wanted. Later that afternoon, we sat at the end of the dock, feet dangling in the cool water. Rohan pitched ideas for fixing up the boathouse while I sketched rough plans in a notebook. You know, he said thoughtfully, watching the sunlight dance across the lake, I think Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing when he gave you this place. Yeah, I replied. I think so too. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting golden reflections across the water, I realized Grandpa had given me more than a cabin. He'd given me a chance to heal old wounds, to rebuild trust, and to keep our family connected to what truly mattered. And this time, I intended to do it right.